Depending on who you ask, Lex Fridman is a super genius former professor at MIT, truth-telling podcast aficionado. Other people will say he's a lying industry plant grifter who pushes certain narratives based on whatever will make him famous under the guise of neutrality and working for a greater good. When I first encountered Lex Fridman, I saw him as more of the man taught at MIT and had an academic paper endorsed by and Elon Musk. That's pretty remarkable stuff, but the more I look into this man, the more I realize that almost everything he does is deceptive, embellished, or just a flat-out lie. This guy has one of the most popular podcasts in the world, yet somehow also has zero charisma.
For people who are not familiar, what if someday or night a demon, by the way, he has a demon introduce this thought experiment. What if someday or night a demon were to steal after you into your loneliest loneliness?
He'll humiliate himself on podcasts despite claiming to be an alpha male. He has an extremely shady background that nobody can make sense of other than accusing him of being an intelligence asset, which might hold more weight than I originally thought. So let's try and get to the bottom of who is Lex Fridman. Lex was born in the Tajik Soviet Republic in 1983 to Russian Jewish parents. He spent his childhood in Moscow until his family moved to the USA following the collapse of the Soviet Union. Lex's father was a plasma physicist and began teaching at Drexel University. Lex and his brother would follow in their father's footsteps and also attend Drexel University, where Lex would obtain his bachelor's, master's, and a PhD. Now, Drexel University is a respected school and anyone would be proud to graduate from there, especially with 3 separate degrees. Anyone except for Lex, apparently. What's interesting is that on all of Lex's personal media, he never mentions Drexel University, not even once. He never mentions he went there, he never talks about it on podcasts, nothing. He and his dad had a podcast years ago, who, keep in mind, is a professor at Drexel, but that podcast has been scrubbed clean from the internet. Even going through his catalog, you won't find podcast 100. What's weird is that you can find Drexel articles about Lex, and even this really old post where he confirms that he went there. On his Wikipedia, which he's not in control of, by the way, it says Drexel University. Lex claimed that this was an attack on him for no good reason, slandering him even. Now, note this pattern of behavior for Lex. Every time he's confronted on something shady or something that doesn't add up, he plays victim. Try looking up Drexel on his subreddit and nothing will come up. In fact, if you even mention Drexel on his subreddit or tweet at him about Drexel University, you'll almost certainly be banned or blocked. Even if you're just saying, hey, wait, didn't you go to Drexel? So what gives? Well, he does mention his association with MIT constantly, by the way. How he's a research scientist at MIT, how he taught at MIT. If you didn't do any research, you'd assume the only school Lex had affiliations with would be MIT. But what if I told you Lex has barely any connection to MIT? If you look through the MIT faculty lists, Lex is nowhere to be found. But if you go on YouTube, he has alleged lectures that took place at MIT. So did he really teach at MIT? Well, it turns out Lex taught a January community class at MIT. This class that Lex taught was a class that wasn't for marks. There was no requirement to be there, no grading, no anything. MIT and other universities will usually offer these classes for anybody to take if they have an interest in a subject. Now, teaching this and being a tenured professor are very, very different things, but it didn't stop Lex from putting MIT all over his social media. His LinkedIn, for example, says MIT and nothing about Drexel, which is weird because on a LinkedIn, you'd want all of your academic credentials on there. Even if you go to any of his papers, it cites his school as MIT. Again, when you're publishing an academic paper, you'd want all of your academic qualifications in there. So why is he so eager to cover up the fact that he went to Drexel and not MIT? Well, because Lex uses this to give himself authority when speaking.
Lex Fridman, MIT, also, which is something those people seem to sometimes care about, the followers and stuff like that. Like, did you just do that? And then they said, enough of that nonsense. Enough of that nonsense. They said to me, enough of that nonsense.
So what is his affiliation with MIT? Apparently what Lex did is what a lot of slimy academics do to boost their clout. Somebody from MIT commented on these dubious practices. Basically what people will do is the bare minimum to get associated with the school. So for Lex, he gave a free lecture for no marks. He managed to get an MIT email as a result. People who aren't involved with MIT see that and think, wow, That's prestigious. Also, as somebody with a PhD, it's possible you could offer to do unpaid research for MIT, then you get library access, and most importantly, the MIT email.
As a research scientist at MIT, I've had, and especially just part of a large set of collaborations, I've had a lot of students come to me and talk to me about ideas.
In reality, the only thing I've been able to confirm regarding the relationship between Lex and MIT is that he did teach a non-credit after-hours community class. That was also out of semester. So no, this doesn't make you a professor or even an associate professor. It makes you a guy who spoke at MIT one time. So Lex could be doing free research for MIT and teaching free classes, but saying he researched and taught at MIT is technically true. In the same way the guy who cleans floors at the Tesla factory works for Tesla. It's like Brendan Schaub claiming he was in the NFL because he tried out for the Bills, not realizing that literally anyone can just show up to a tryout.
College football, NFL.
Yep.
You were on the training team, or not training
Buffalo
team.
Bills.
Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, camp.
What the fuck happened?
Training camp?
Yeah.
I pulled a hamstring.
What my favorite part about this whole saga is that for all of his profile pictures, Lex uses this photo of him speaking at MIT, and you'll notice all this complicated math behind him. You'd think that this is Lex's math, but no, it was the guy before him who wrote all this stuff on the board, and Lex just walked in after and gave a lecture. But it looks very fancy on literally all of his social media profile pictures. This is the original research that got me kind of interested in Lex. It got me thinking, this is very shady. All of this is super suspicious. Why would you go so far to hide where you actually graduated from and push this MIT narrative so hard? In reality, any normal person would put that MIT as a footnote, but Lex makes it his entire personality and uses it when giving himself authority on certain topics. Now, Lex claims MIT still pays him as a researcher, so clearly he must be greatly respected in the academic world, right? Other academics could come out and speak positively about his work, and all of what I'm saying would be disproven or overblown. But what's interesting is that Lex's claim to fame was when he wrote a paper on the safety and effectiveness of Tesla's self-driving capabilities. Now, somebody like Lex, who's taught at MIT and researches and has so much background in academia, would obviously publish a paper like this academically, right? But it never was published academically, which is very strange for anyone at an alleged high level like Lex, considering he's had papers published in the past that are considered legit. But for this paper, it was never peer-reviewed or even published via MIT. For those of you who don't know, a peer review is absolutely essential for any academic paper to be considered legit. Think of it as a quality control for papers that everybody has to meet. The bare minimum standard for an academic paper is a peer review. This paper that Lex wrote happened to be extremely favorable to Tesla. People in the tech industry absolutely reamed it. Nobody would co-sign it, nobody would peer review it, and even today it's extremely hard to find an archive of it. Most of what you can find on it is people shitting on how bad it is. In fact, experts in the field called it incorrect, biased, and misleading to the point of negligence. That is pretty damning, if I do say so myself. The paper was so biased and so bad that people in the industry have actively distanced themselves from Lex as a result. Even people who aren't high-level academics want nothing to do with him, like Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Have you seen Lex Fridman playing guitar while he's driving around in a self-driving car? Yeah, Lex drove around in a Tesla while playing guitar. It's pretty fascinating. Have you done Lex's podcast?
No.
You would love him. He's an AI researcher. From MIT originally, and now he's mostly doing independent work and doing his own podcast. And brilliant guy. You would love him. And he's got an amazing podcast too.
Okay, so here it's going to be in this section.
I don't think you're interested in Lex's podcast. Lex actually is one of the most brilliant people I know. I think you would love talking to him.
An interesting quote here from Walter Bagehot.
Despite how bad this paper was, it did catch the attention of somebody important, somebody who has a lot of interest in positive Tesla news, that being Elon Musk.
Legalize comedy. Yeah.
We know Elon isn't one for morals or facts as long as it makes him money and makes him feel good, so he signal boosted Lex super hard to the point of even appearing on his podcast after only 18 episodes. This has caused people to call Lex an industry plant, which, depending on if you consider this a plant move by Musk, could be true because it blew Lex up into mainstream podcasting. Some random AI researcher almost overnight became one of the biggest podcasters in the world, pushing Lex as an intellectual who went to MIT and is a trusted source when it comes to research, even if none of those things are true, or at least half true. Ever since this interview with Elon, Lex has been an absolute Musk and Tesla meat rider. He will stop at no self-awareness to defend his hero Elon. While Elon could be considered Lex's jumpstart, his appearance on Rogan was what truly solidified him as a podcasting mainstay. Joe, being immune to bullshit, was immediately enthralled by Lex Fridman. Thinking this man was a super genius, he got him connected to some of the most influential people in podcasting, like Brendan Schaub. This left Lex and Joe with almost completely overlapping audiences, with Joe being the more Neanderthal-brained one and Lex being the alleged intellectual. Speaking of Neanderthal-brained, I want you to imagine this. Me arriving at the Melbourne airport. I am jet lagged, can barely function, and I'm forced to stand in a line at a cell phone kiosk to get a SIM card so I can use my phone. The attendant speaks an incomprehensible dialect of English known as Australian, and it takes me well over an hour to finally have my phone up and running. None of this would have happened if I used Saley, easily my favorite sponsor to grace this channel. Saley is an eSIM app that I have literally recommended to every single person in my life that travels. I even used it when I went to VidCon last month, and it was a lifesaver. My phone plan requires I pay $14 per day when I go abroad and use data. Saley charged me the same price for a data plan that lasted me a week. But when I added the code GHOSTGUM at checkout, it was actually cheaper than 1 day of roaming data. And pretty much no matter where you're going, Saley will have you covered. I mean, look at all the countries they have. You're basically good anywhere. My mom and sister were a bit skeptical, but after they checked a few other apps, they said Saley had by far the best prices, which you can take advantage of by scanning the QR code on screen or clicking the link below and using code GHOSTGUM to get 15% off. And even if you're not traveling, you can use Saley to top up your data and save some money. It also immensely helps out the channel, so check them out if you're in the market. Use the QR code on screen or link in description, and if you want to support these videos, this is the best way to do it. Since Lex had captured an audience similar to Joe Rogan's, he felt the need to be like Joe Rogan, which has led to some hilariously embarrassing moments like this.
I learned more in these maths than I have in all my years. I'm a nerd, I got a PhD. I learned more about life, about the mind on these maths than I have in all the years of school. If you want to be the best in the world at something like I do, I want to build robots better than anybody else in the world. Or whether that's knitting or yodeling, anything, you have to work. But you have to work hard.
It was around this time when people started to realize Lex does better when he's pseudo-intellectually rambling about AI, not when he's trying to be an alpha male, because he went to the Elon Musk school of cool, where being good at one thing is not enough. You can't just be a smart guy. You have to be the ultimate gamer, the ultimate musician, the best at everything. And much like when Elon does this, when Lex does it, it's insanely cringe. Now, for those of you who can't stomach cringe, I'm giving you a warning that this is one of the worst clips I've ever seen. You have been warned.
In the desert, I met a man with an eagle perching on his hand. And he asked me, son, what can I do for you? In this cruel world, there is a man you should listen to as you journey on through life. His name is Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan. Shoulders for days and a really wide back. Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan, a barrel of snakes for a bag.
You fucked up. You should have never done that song. It was terrible.
I can't put my finger on it, but I think what makes Lex so embarrassing is he's trying insanely hard to make it look like he's not trying, if that makes sense. Once you notice that he's a transparent figure, it makes everything he does groan-worthy. I mean, this guy basically faked his way to the top and is now still faking it. Lex has been getting ever more political lately. While claiming to be a centrist, he clearly has a bias, especially towards Trump and Elon or whoever else might take interest in his takes. Now, what's interesting is Lex can get bigger profile guests than Joe Rogan. Like, this guy had Jeff Bezos, Benjamin Netanyahu, and Oliver Stone on his podcast, plus all the high-profile Rogan guests like Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, and even Trump. This has led to some people questioning if his rise is authentic. Even Rogan-adjacent comedians are perplexed by the rise of Lex. What I think is more likely is that Lex has proven himself to be a puppet who will say whatever benefits people. Look at Elon Musk, for example. He will say whatever benefits Elon Musk and will never criticize him. Obviously displayed by his academic paper that greatly benefited him, despite if it was true or not, but even just the way he talks about Elon. Other powerful people with special interests noticed this and started going on Lex's show. This then naturally raises the prestige of the show. I was on Lex's show, the same show as Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and Mark Zuckerberg. This is why Lex benefits from grifting as an unbiased, unopinionated academic, because people who believe him look at him as a trusted source who's gonna give you the facts, even if that's not true at all. Not as a guy whose show acts as a mouthpiece for rich and powerful people to push their agenda, regardless of facts. Lex claims that he will talk to anyone and everyone in a respectful way and that he has no bias, but anybody who's watched his show knows that that's not true at all. You can see using his own words, like when he refused to acknowledge January 6th as a coup attempt, despite him talking to an actual historian about it, which, by the way, most people, regardless of political belief, will say that this was a coup attempt. But by far the worst example of this is when he interviewed President Zelensky of Ukraine, which might be one of the worst high-profile interviews of all time. Now, before we talk about why that interview's so bad, we have to talk about love.
It's about love. You mentioned love. Why do we humans fall in love? Put love out into the world. I gotta ask you about love. Bukowski had this line about love being a fog that dissipates with the first light of reality.
Lex has this embarrassing obsession with the concept of love. He is constantly talking about love like a teenager who tried mushrooms for the first time. Why can't we all just love each other, man? It's super corny that a guy with as much academic background as Lex thinks that all problems in the world can be solved as if it's a fucking Disney princess movie.
And I definitely seek that kind of love with a life partner, with a person that I could, how does the saying goes, ride or die with. I can bury the bodies with them.
Most of the time it's just cringe and harmless, but sometimes it's downright delusional. Lex straight up asked Zelensky if he could forgive Putin with the power of love, which is maybe one of the dumbest things I've heard in my entire life. If somebody murdered your entire family and friends, would you use the power of love to forgive them? Lex heavily pressed Zelensky on Russia and the war and asked him some pretty hard-hitting questions, but will not give that same hard-hitting attitude to the other side. So with all this talk about love, Lex must be this stoic figure that really cares for all humans, except much like his entire persona, it's all an act. Proven when Mark Norman shared a story of Lex freaking out at a lady because her printer wasn't working.
Well, what's fun is we did it in a hotel in New York. He was in town for some reason, and the printer wasn't working in the lobby, and I got to watch him yell at the lady behind the desk, and that was weird, seeing him not be that robot guy. He was like, what the hell? The printer doesn't work? Get your shit together. And some girl like, I don't know.
Do you think Lex has love for her? Or better question, could he learn to forgive that printer? It's all a grift to prop up his image as this forgiving, nice guy intellectual. If you couldn't tell by watching the Zelensky interview, Lex is also a Russia shill. Now, it's not proved he's being paid by Russia like Tim Pool. We have to look a bit deeper when looking at Lex. Like when he was shitting on Zelensky after he met with Trump and Vance. But guys, he's totally unbiased and is just looking for solutions, which is why he had Thanksgiving dinner with the Trump family. Totally unbiased, by the way. If you think the guy who had Thanksgiving dinner with the Trump family and was made famous by simping for Elon Musk is unbiased, I have an MIT academic paper to show you that I definitely wrote, and if any of you in the comments say otherwise, you will be permanently banned from commenting on my videos. Lex is also a big believer in free speech, which is why he literally blocks anybody who criticizes him. Alpha male Lex might be one of the most sensitive people on the planet. Lex's block list on Twitter is probably in the thousands at this point. He blocks people who glance at his profile the wrong way. Anybody who criticizes him, blocked. Anybody who says he should get a peer review on his academic paper, blocked. Anybody who points out the university that he went to, which was Drexel and not MIT, you guessed it, blocked. I wouldn't be surprised if I'm blocked after this video, so follow me for more updates on that. The censorship has gotten so bad on Lex's subreddit that they had to create another one just to actually discuss and criticize Lex. People were getting banned for just simply asking questions about Lex's background. And when they're not banned, sometimes we'll get a rare Lex sighting. Lex is so terminally online that he will randomly show up in comment sections to defend himself, saying that the internet is full of hateful, cruel people, but he still has love for them, of course. He disappears just as quickly once you question his ethics. Okay, but who cares about Lex's personal life or opinions? How is his podcast? Surely he must be a good interviewer. Joe Rogan, whether you like him or not, can carry a conversation. He's charismatic and can make even the most boring guests an entertaining chat, most of the time. Lex does not have this same skill. His podcast is incredibly boring and slow. In fact, if you want to listen to it, turn up the speed because it becomes way more tolerable. Beyond the biased shilling and corniness, Lex just isn't a great conversationalist, which leads to some incredibly awkward and uncomfortable moments.
I'm as alpha in everything I do as it gets. And the fact that on Joe Rogan said that I thought Scent of a Woman is a better movie than John Wick put me into this beta category.
Lex has this really shady thing where nothing about him is really true. It's all half-truths, embellishments, withholding information, sometimes straight up censoring information. It's left people asking, what does this guy even do? Who is this guy? People have taken notice of this, especially over the years. Tim Dillon had an impeccable rant about these pseudo-intellectual types that basically sums it all up, including Lex.
That Lex Fridman interview is great. It's great. It's 6 hours because he takes 6 minutes to ask each question, but I love him. I'm just trying to stay in this, but he's great. He's a genius. And everyone says he's a genius. I don't know if he's a genius. What does he do? He's a coder?
Yeah, for AI.
Wait, so what does that even mean?
So like he...
Does anyone have to ask credentials anymore? Everyone goes, Eric Weinstein's a genie. Does anyone know why? What? Is there anything they've done? No, truly, because all they do is talk. Is there anything they've built? Is there one appliance that they have anything to do with? Have they come up with something even like the Rotato, which peels and slices a potato as you could? Like, is there one thing any of them have done except whack off Elon Musk and talk? And you can't find a thing they do. What is their job? What is any of their jobs?
To do research.
Into what? Why and who? Where? Where's the what? They all do research all day, but they're all on Clubhouse for 9 hours. What are they researching? They're just talking about trans people. They're all supposedly tech geniuses who's talking about who has a cock. I'm not a fan of women getting beaten up by men in sport, but it's like, these are the best minds of our time, and all they're talking about is if somebody's tucking the D.
It's convenient that Lex and these other guys say academia is being corrupted so their audience ignores them, when Lex has been shady or half-truthing about his academic background for years now. Guys like Lex have become mainstays in Joe Rogan's space. Therefore, because Joe Rogan is basically mainstream now, these guys also become mainstream. Joe Rogan, podcaster and alleged comedian, has arguably become more mainstream than mainstream news. If you told me this would happen a few years ago, I'd call you crazy. But now guys like Lex have been able to become the mainstream, and I'm not afraid to say they're all grifters. All of them. They love to wax on about how the mainstream media is biased, speech is being censored, and they're the last line of defense. My guy, you are the mainstream media now. You're biased, you censor people, and you misrepresent shit all the time. I think what drives people insane nowadays is insincerity. People who claim to be something that they're not. And that's the only word I need to describe Lex. Insincere. He's the perfect example of a grifter. He claims to be an unbiased, super genius alpha male. He is none of those things. He's an agenda-pushing grifter who desperately tries to fit into the Rogan sphere and continues to embarrass himself in the process. He claims to be all about love, but freaks out on random people, bans, and blocks anybody who mildly criticizes him. And most importantly, he's not a truth seeker. Lex is someone who just cares about blowing up his image and making himself more famous, which is fine. But don't pretend like you're not that. But the problem with Lex is he's in too deep now. He's grifted so hard, there's no going back. His entire persona and brand is propped up by the fact that he's an unbiased academic. If it somehow comes out that, hey, you didn't actually go to MIT, hey, some of your takes are pretty biased, you got put on by writing a bullshit paper. If any of this comes out, Lex is fucked. His whole brand and persona is shattered. That means less podcast views, no more dinners with Trump, no more conversations with world leaders and billionaires. So that's why Lex's strategy of playing victim and blocking people to control the narrative when he's called out is the only strategy that'll work for him. And the worst part is Lex's audience will continue to buy into his victim complex, that he's actually a really nice and smart guy who's getting attacked for no good reason. He isn't respected by academics. He isn't motivational. He's a boring as shit podcaster. So why the fuck do people watch him? There's a running joke within the podcast world that Lex is an intelligence asset. I had a good laugh at this until I watched this episode with Tim Dillon, where Lex gets a bit defensive about calling other people intelligence assets.
Not do things overtly with our military and with U.S. policy and get things passed through Congress. You have a shadow organization.
Now, I won't go into it due to YouTube's ad regulations, but the end of this podcast had everyone saying that Lex is in the Mossad. I believe this to be true, not because I know of any links or proof that Lex is in the Mossad, but because it's the only explanation on why one of the most boring podcasters ever gets to interview some of the most high-profile people on the entire planet. Also, recently, since the Trump and Elon falling out, Lex has said they need to do a podcast and solve their issues. So, yeah, think about who really gets hurt in the divorce.
Love is the answer. As some guy on some podcast once said,